Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the educational web series presented by Matrix Integrated Solutions. Today's session is brought to us by ScanForce. It's talking about warehouse management, barcoding, and how it cuts costs and eliminates mistakes. I'm going to turn it over to Brian. Brian is with ScanForce, and he's going to take us away and teach us what his product does and how it helps us eliminate those costs and mistakes. Brian, it's all yours.
Great, thank you very much. All right, well, I appreciate you folks joining in, taking some time out of your day. Again, my name is Brian Berry. I'm with ScanForce, and excuse me, my voice is a little hoarse. Talking to you from Atlanta, Georgia, big Georgia Bulldog fan, so I'm still hoarse from the game Monday night and yelling at the screen and the officials and such. So pardon me if I cough my way through this a little bit, but it's not COVID, it's just a celebration. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Let me advance on into the product review. First, let me tell you a little bit about our product and our company, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts. First of all, we've been around for a while. In the software world, that's kind of a long time. You can see we have 800 installations and 8,000 users, actually more than that now. So the point here is you wouldn't be a guinea pig in going with our solution. We have lots of people that put our screens through its paces every single day. So they've worked out a lot of the kinks, and so you certainly wouldn't be a guinea pig and be forced to try something new. That next point there is kind of interesting. It talks about us working in a connected and a disconnected environment. If you're one of those people that says, we don't have the greatest Wi-Fi coverage in our warehouse, that's okay. We'd rather you spend your money somewhere else than spending a lot of money up in the ceiling of your warehouse. Our application actually doesn't require a full-time connection to the system, to Sage. If we have a connection in the beginning for let's say it's a receiving transaction, we're going to download all the information about that receipt to the handheld, because it is actually a handheld computer. It's a smart device. And we can scan, do our receipt, whatever we need to do in a disconnected environment. And then at the very end, once we reacquire a signal, we can send all that information back and sync up with Sage. So we are directly integrated with Sage. We run on the same box as Sage. We add modules to Sage. We add fields within Sage modules. We add buttons on Sage screens. And looks like we have another person joining in now. It's great.
I'll admit him.
So another thing that we'll talk about quite a bit as we go is Multibin. Now, you may be somewhat familiar with Multibin for the fact that Sage doesn't really account for Multibin. From its inception, when Sage was originally written, it was assumed that every item would only have one location. There's that one location field that exists in that item master file. Well, that's not really realistic in the modern warehouse, where you might have one location for onesie, twosie pick type quantities. You may have another location where you have full cases of something, and another location up on a high shelf or in the back of the warehouse where you may have full skids of this product. And today, you have to have someone that just sort of knows where everything is, which is great until that guy gets sick and then isn't in that day, and somebody else has to pick up their slack and doesn't necessarily know where everything is. Wouldn't it be great if Sage knew where everything was? So we recognize this need, and we at ScanForce, we wrote a Multibin solution. Sage adopted it as their own, and now you can utilize Multibin software from ScanForce in the Sage environment. So even if you're not interested in barcoding and inventory control, which I assume you are because you're here today to hear this talk, but even if you didn't have our WMS product, you could still utilize our Multibin solution and let Sage keep up with where everything is all the time. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. So I'll talk a little bit now about the platform and how we're built and some of the technology. Won't spend a whole lot of time on the technical side of things, but just to give you a sense of familiarity with what we're doing. We designed the system from the ground up to be a Sage 100 integrated product. We run on Android, Apple, Windows. It's very scalable. In fact, this platform, we have one client that has over 1,000 devices with their drivers out in the field. So very scalable. You're not going to throw something at us that's too big for the ScanForce system to handle. Another thing to think about is the speed, how you access the data. So we did something that was called a million record challenge with Sage. We loaded 1 million records in the database, which is a lot. And then we ask for one specific piece of information to see what the response time was. As you can see on the screen, it's actually milliseconds, okay? So just the architecture of our system is designed to be very scalable and very fast. So whatever you throw at us, just wanted you to be familiar and comfortable with the fact that you know that we can handle it from a technical standpoint. And now we've got the obligatory logo screens. These are just some of the partners that we deal with in this Sage world. And you may be interfacing with some of these before, be it Mapadoc, or be it you may have a DSD enhancement, or maybe using Starship for your shipping needs. Well, we'd like to say we play well in the sandbox with all of these folks, and we have integration points with these people. And so if you're using any of these ancillary solutions to augment your Sage environment, we can play right along with them. Okay, so that's some of the technical stuff out of the way. Now let's talk a little bit more about what exactly ScanForce is. At our core, what we do is we extend Sage inventory functions out into the warehouse. So if you're doing a receiving transaction, shipping a sales order, any sort of production completions, things of that nature in a manufacturing setting, if you're doing transfers, issues, receipts, anything that impacts your inventory, we allow you to move that from the box on your desk into a mobile handheld out into the warehouse, and we incorporate barcode scanning. So some of the advantages of using it, the why someone would want to use it, number one, we reduce errors. It's very simple. If you go into a receiving transaction, if you're doing the old pen and paper method, there's really no validation there. You can write down anything you want on that piece of paper, and then it's going to get shuffled off to the office, and someone's going to do an administrative step and try to interpret your chicken scratch and decipher, is that a 4, is that a 9, and then try to key that into the system. Not a whole lot of validation going on there. What we do with ScanForce with the mobile handhelds, we actually validate every entry along the way. Is the PO open and valid? The item that you're selecting, is it actually on that purchase order? The quantity that you're receiving, is it too much or too little? So especially if you're doing lots and serials, we handle lots of serials really, really well. Instead of trying to write down all the lots and serial numbers that are out there, wouldn't it be nice if the system just allowed you to either scan them or select them from a list? So another thing that we do is we do everything much more timely. We talked about that paper method where you have to send the document physically in. There's always a bit of a time lag there. Even if you have to run it into the office, it's still a time lag. And so you may be making business decisions off of what your inventory looked like an hour ago or yesterday. Well, for us, everything is in real time.
How are you?
Oh, Jeremy, can we mute the background? You could do that for me while I'm going on. Thank you. So another thing that we do is accuracy. I always say that when you scan the barcode, you know exactly what you're going to get. There's not a whole lot of validation on accuracy with pen on paper. So if you transpose a number or write down the wrong thing, then that can jump up and bite you. But with us, you scan the barcode, you're going to get exactly what's in that barcode, what's right behind those vertical lines. Okay, so much more accurate. So accuracy and efficiencies, timeliness, reducing errors. Another thing is the amount of time it takes. So we're doing things in real time versus waiting hours or maybe even a day to get things into the system. Okay, in physical count, it's a huge time savings. In fact, there's some industry agnostic statistics out there that have nothing to do with ScanForce or Sage, but just in general in warehousing. If you use barcoding to do physical inventory, it's estimated that you can save 70 to 85% of your labor costs by using the barcoding system. Okay. We have labels. We'll talk about how we handle labeling as we go. We've already talked and touched a little bit on Multibin. We'll touch more on that later. One of the big things is safety stock. Okay, think about how much fluff you have to add to your inventory levels to make sure you don't run out of those critical items, those top 10 items that you just can't ever be out of. It's like McDonald's can't be out of hamburgers. So what's the safety stock? How many of those items do you have to keep on extra? Because maybe there's misshipments involved. Maybe you thought you had it, you can't find it in the warehouse because the guy that knows where everything is out sick today. So what we do by making your inventory more accurate, more timely entry, more efficient, we allow you to sort of lower that safety stock threshold because you have more faith and trust that the inventory levels that are in the system are accurate. The bottom line here is by using barcoding, it's going to save you time and money. Okay, so let's take a quick glance at what we do. We really have two sides of our operation. And I know that today you came to talk about warehousing. So we're going to talk about shipping and receiving and all the transfers, issues, and receipts, all the inventory transactions and how things can be made more efficient with barcoding. But I also want to put a bug in your ear that we have this solution called mobile sales. It's secondary to the WMS. It can be used with it or without it as a standalone. So what it gives you the ability to do on a tablet, an iPad type device is take quotes and turn them into sales orders and pull up invoices for your customers and do stock level inquiries. And the reasons you might want to do that, down at the bottom here, talking about the mobile sales, think about if you have field reps, people that go out in the field and sit across the desk from your customers, and they want to do things in real time. So they say, you know, let me check inventory. I can tell you right now how much of that we've got. Or maybe you have a counter sales department and you want them to have the ability to take an order on the fly from a customer, then walk back in the racks, scan and pull that out of inventory and immediately update your inventory to reduce it to know that those aren't there anymore for the next salesperson that's looking for them. Trade shows is something that we used to hang our hat on. Maybe, you know, in a post-COVID world, we get back to doing more trade shows where people take orders there, but hopefully sooner rather than later. And also another use is you can actually give this to your customers if you have consignment inventory there. We have a lot of clients that do that where the inventory that they own is actually on site for their clients, and when they consume it, they need to make note of that. Okay, so back up to the top, I'll stop talking about mobile sales and we'll refocus on the warehouse management system, the WMS part. So if you're into distribution and warehousing, if you have items that are on the shelf that need to go out to a client, that's at our core. That's what we do. Any sort of assembly, manufacturing, we're great in food and beverage because they do a lot with expiration dates and lot numbers and things of that nature. And we handle those so much better, so much easier than doing it on pen and paper. Okay, so now let's talk about how we actually put this into work, how it actually gets to you in your environment. We have it divided into 3 different editions or versions, if you will. And we have it divided this way so you can choose which feature set makes the most sense for you. So our basic model is fundamentals. It does everything that you need to run the basic warehouse. If you've got a warehouse, these are all the things that you're going to be doing on pretty much a daily, if not weekly basis. Receive POs, ship things out, do physical inventories, the Sage transfers, issues, and receipts functions. Those are all built in for that one cost. Okay, then if you have a larger environment, a more complex or unique environment, and we need to add some more features to make the system more workable for you, then we can move up to our advanced version where we add these features in. Things like auto post. You know, in Sage where everything flows into a batch and then someone has to go and do an administrative step of processing the batch? Well, auto post bypasses those batch processes within Sage. So for instance, if I'm doing a receipt on a handheld, okay, when I hit the button on my handheld to send the data back over to Sage, it's going to go into a batch and we're immediately going to backflush it. So that inventory is live in my inventory right away. So we have a lot of customers that take advantage of that because it gets them closer to real time, as close to real time as possible. Okay, we also allow for a different method of shipping. So it's called pick and pack or pick and ship. And what that means is you may have different classes of worker in the warehouse that have different roles. You may have some people that just concentrate on picking orders. So I'm going to go pick an order and I'm going to take it to what I'll call a packing station. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to pick the next order. And after I drop it at that packing station, somebody else takes over and they're the ones that puts it in a container, in a box, puts it on a pallet and shrink wraps it. They're the ones that actually prepare it for shipment. So we allow for this 2-step sort of divided process for shipping orders out within our advanced system. We also have something called directed picking. Now, in our normal fundamental shipping, it tells you everything on the order and everything that you need to ship. But in advance with direct picking, the system actually looks at the orders and says, based on where these orders are stored in the warehouse, I'm going to build you the most efficient serpentine path to walk through the warehouse to collect all of these items. So in other words, if you have sort of an aisle A, aisle B, aisle C philosophy, with directed picking, it's going to direct you down aisle A to get everything that you need there. And then if there's nothing on aisle B, it'll say jump over to aisle C and get something you need there, and then jump all the way over to aisle H and get something there if there's nothing in between. So directed picking is the epitome of efficiency. It eliminates steps and it allows you to do more with less people. Okay. We also have this dashboards, or we call our management console. The management console stores all the information that transfers from the handheld back to Sage. And so everything that you do. So when it comes time to say, you know, I've got an issue with the inventory quantity on this one item, I wonder why. In the management console, you can simply type in that item number, and we're going to show you a chronological listing of every transaction that impacted that particular item code. So you can literally step back through time. You can see when it was done, who done it, what they did, what order was it on, everything about it, and find those problems if they happen to creep into the system. So it's a great tool to use to sort of track down issues or do research. You can build reports in there, you can build views and save them and print off PDFs for management meetings and things of that nature. It's a really powerful tool. And also within batch management, we give you some abilities better than what Sage does to control batches, how things flow into batches. Do you want all transactions of a type to go into one batch? Do you want them to be separated by users? We just give you some extra tools and bells and whistles that Sage doesn't have. So you have those two sets. You have fundamentals and advanced as feature sets. Now, if you want to add multi-bin on top of what we have in advanced, that's when we move over to premium. Okay, so we add the multi-bin logic to the advanced feature set, and now you've got our premium package. And remember when I said before that we wrote Sage's multi-bin solution? It's called the DSD/ScanForce Multibin. We wrote it in conjunction with DSD, like a lot of their other enhancement plugins. So we have two different versions there. There's a basic and there's an advanced. Now what we're going to do with premium is we're going to utilize the advanced version. That's that third bullet point you see down there. And we actually give it to you for free. I said before, you could purchase that from Matrix and add Multibin Advanced to your environment today in Sage, even if you didn't do any barcoding or scanning out in the warehouse, okay? But if you purchase our premium package, we're gonna give you our advanced version for free. It's included. And it does some really cool features like auto allocations. For instance, when I'm entering a sales order, I may want to reserve a particular subset of my inventory, maybe inventory that's in a certain location, or maybe if I'm using lot numbers or serial numbers in my environment, I want to go ahead and reserve specific lots or specific serial numbers. I can do that with here. I have a lot of stock replenishment reports. So if we have that pick location and overflow location, it'll tell me when I need to move things from the overflow and replenish those pick bins, okay? So those are some of the multi-bin advanced features. But if you say, you look at this list, you say, you know what? My needs are fairly basic. I don't need the feature set in advanced. The fundamentals sits me fine, but I really want multi-bin. Do I have to jump all the way from fundamentals to premium to get it? The answer is no, because we have this multi-bin basic solution. It's actually a free download from Sage, and this is something that the Matrix folks can do for you. So we can bolt that multi-bin basic, the free version, onto fundamentals. So now for a very easy price to get into barcode scanning, you can have everything you need to run your warehouse and multi-bin included as well, without going to the expense of advanced or the premium packages. The bottom line is flexibility. We give you a lot of options and a lot of ways to slice and dice the system to make it work for you. And the best part is, if you start at fundamentals, 6 months later, if you say, you know what, that auto post stuff sounds cool. We're spending so much time processing batches. I want that. All you do is pay the difference between the two and you can upgrade. You never lose the value of something that you've purchased with ScanForce. You just pay the difference between the two and you have a very clear upgrade path. Okay, so let's dive a little bit more into multi-bin. We talked a little bit about it. This screenshot that you're seeing up there right now comes right out of inventory inquiry. So normally you look at inventory inquiry, if you have, say, multiple warehouses, you'll see all the warehouses. If you look at one item, this item 6655, which comes right out of the Sage demo library. So if you look at that, it will show you how much you have in each warehouse. But with Multibin, you can click on a warehouse and it becomes dynamic, and it's going to open up this view and it's going to show you all of the bins where this item is, even showing that I have 12 units that are staged to be shipped out on a sales order. Okay, so it's giving you a lot more visibility to your inventory. I can see exactly where everything is. And if I had an overstock location here, it would show me that as well. So I would know I had a bunch sitting in an overstock that I could go and replenish my pick bins. Okay, so I don't want to harp too much on Multibin. By the way, if you have any questions about anything you're seeing today and how it might interface with you and your personal environment, reach out to your Matrix rep. They will get in touch with me, and then the three of us will have a conversation just like this for you and allow you to ask all the questions that you have. You give me your particular, specific things that are unique to your warehouse, and I'll tell you how all of this can work in your environment. Okay. So once we get those three main additions, whether it's fundamental, advanced, or premium, we have several modules that you can use to sort of customize the system. One of them is label printing. Probably 95% of our clients use labeling because they want to take advantage of the barcode scanning. And if their vendors aren't pre-labeling things when they come in, then we're going to label at the time of receipt. Now, this labeling, first of all, we're not going to leave you on an island. When you start with us, what we're going to do is during the implementation process, we're going to teach you how to design these labels, and we're going to hold your hand through the process, designing the first few with you until you're comfortable with it, and then you can design as many as you want. And they can be extremely simple. A lot of our clients simply have one barcode and an item number and a description, and that's all that exists on their labels, and that's all they need. But we have other customers, pardon me, that go to the extent of using 2D barcodes like this demented chessboard looking guy down here in the bottom right hand corner. Okay, you might look at that and think you might get hungry because you're used to scanning that in a restaurant to pull up a menu. Okay, so with 2D barcodes, we can do a lot of cool stuff. As the story goes, we can encode the entire Gettysburg Address in the size of a postage stamp using a 2D barcode. So we can pack a lot of information in there. In fact, some of our customers that have very sophisticated inventory, they may be tracking an item number, the quantity that's in the box, they want the description, they may have a lot number, or they may have multiple serial numbers in a box, they may be tracking expiration dates, all this superfluous information that's out there. We can embed that into a 2D barcode. And now every time they need to access that, one trigger pull on a barcode scanner, and we can populate all those fields at one time. So you want to talk about efficiency gains, 2D barcodes is a big, big winner when you get to that. So these up here are just some examples of some layouts. You see here we even have belt printers. So if you're up on a truck or up on a man lift or something and you want to put labels on something, you don't want to get off and walk to the printer, we even have solutions for that. So a lot of different things that we can do with labeling to make your life easier. Okay. Now, talk just briefly about manufacturing. Some of you listening to this may do manufacturing, some may not. So if you're not, have a drink of coffee and we'll get back to you in just a second. But for those of you that are doing manufacturing, you probably have bill of materials on Sage, or the older work order process, or maybe you've migrated to the newer production management. Either way, we have a module on our handheld that dovetails directly into either bill of materials, work order, production management, what have you. It allows you to issue material out of stock to a production run. It allows you to do completions and tell us exactly how many of something you made. The labeling is built in here. So when you make a finished good, you can label it instantly right there. You can enter label tracking if you're using production management. We've got a couple of different methods, including a time clock where you hit a green button on the screen that says start, and we start a time clock. And then you hit a big red button when you're done for completions and it stops it, and that time flows back into Sage for you automatically. And one of the newer things we've done, we've added a wrinkle to sort of speed up and make efficient Sage's manufacturing processes. It's called make to order down at the bottom. I'm sitting in a sales order and I'm entering an order that I know I have to generate. I have to make this product. It doesn't exist until I have an order for it. Well, with make to order, we can automatically generate a production management work ticket for you. without having to save the sales order, then go into production management and do a second creation step in building that work ticket. We can pull it from bill of materials, we can pull it from a production management template, and we can have all that information flow, even the options that are selectable at the time of sales order entry. All that can flow directly into the work ticket. This has become wildly popular with a big percentage of our production management users since we introduced this back last year. Okay, so if you have a manufacturing question, let's please have a side conversation about that. Okay, now once we do fundamental, advanced, or premium, and if you want to do labeling, if you're doing manufacturing, we're getting to the point we're trying to customize the system to make it more usable for you. To do that, off to the side, we have over 40 enhancements that allow you to pick and choose which applications make the most sense for you in your environment. Think of it as an a la carte menu. Okay, so for instance, if you have the RMA module in Sage, okay, well, we have an RMA module on the handheld that dovetails into it directly. So you enter an RMA in Sage, that's going to show up in the RMA receiving module on our handheld so that we can validate that what we're getting is what we're expecting. Another thing that's become really popular, especially with all of the problems at the ports with containers and delays and things of that, we have written an application called Container Receipt Management. If you receive containers from overseas, we can make your life a lot easier. What happens here is most of the time, if you're buying something from China, you may have 10 purchase orders tied up in one container coming across the pond. So what we allow you to do, and probably that POs that you're entering, they're FOB shipping points. So as soon as it leaves the dock, or maybe even as soon as it leaves the factory in China, you own it. So what we allow you to do is take the advanced shipping notice and pre-receive those items in Sage, and we're going to put them into an in-transit warehouse or an on-the-water warehouse. So now you have visibility of it in your system. You know that it's there because technically you own it now, even though it's not in your possession. So it's going to be in this virtual warehouse. Then when the container hits your dock, you go into container receiving, and essentially you're just validating that what's in the container is what you received. And then what we do behind the scenes, transparent to the user, is we execute a Sage transfer automatically, and we move it from the virtual warehouse into your production warehouse. It makes handling containers so much easier, grouping sales orders together, grouping purchase orders together that may be contained in one metal box. Okay, so it's just a few things on the receiving side. We have a lot of enhancements on the shipping side because shipping is where we have a lot of differentiation, a lot of changes from one client to the next. Things like wave picking. Wave picking is a method of grouping orders together. For instance, you may be trying to build a job that's going to ship to a customer. You know, if they have a job that's at a site, you may try to put together one load for them. Well, when it comes time to build that load, you can create a wave and select all the line items or the sales orders for that particular customer, for that particular job, put them on a wave, assign them to an individual. Now they know their sole job today is to fulfill all of those sales orders and get them staged for shipment. Another great example is if you're shipping parts and pieces via UPS or FedEx, the UPS truck may show up at 4:30. So if you look at your sales orders for the day and you say, I've got 7 orders that are going to go out UPS, you can put those on one wave, assign it to one person, and now they're responsible for getting all those orders done by 4:30. So waving is just a way of grouping orders together by whatever metric makes the most sense in your environment. Okay, transfer request. How many of you have multiple sites and you send stuff back and forth? A lot of times it's a phone call, scribble something down on a Post-it note, and you hand it to somebody in the warehouse and say, this needs to go on the next truck to the B warehouse, okay? Well, with transfer request, what we've done is we allow you to enter what we'll call a mock sales order on that stocking warehouse. So now I can print pick tickets, I can process that transfer request just like I would any sales order. It gives me a normal flow for the picking process, the staging process, and the shipping process. And then behind the scenes, what we do is we sort of backflush that sales order out of the system when we're done with it, because you're not going to actually invoice it. And then transparent to the user, much like the container program, we're going to issue a transfer in Sage to move it from one warehouse to the other. Okay. Pick to pallet and license plating. We've done a lot of work here programmatically to make life with pallets easier in the last year or so. Pick to pallet, the example I always use is you go to the grocery store and you've got bread, you've got canned goods. which should go on the bottom of the box or the bottom of the bag, okay? You certainly don't want the bread on the bottom and the cans on the top. So same way when you're trying to build a pallet, if you have a sales order and your folks in the warehouse are trying to build a pallet, you may have items or types of items, groups of items that are big or bulky or heavier. They need to be on the bottom. And then the more delicate, dainty stuff needs to go on the top. Well, pick to pallet, so it isolates the inventory and directs the user to pick them in an order that makes the most logical sense to build this pallet. And then we extend that functionality out a little further into license plating. So with license plating, or we call pallet tracking, once you build a pallet, let's say you've got a job going out to a customer and you've got to produce some stuff and it may be 2 weeks before you ship it all out. Well, when you get the first pallet ready, let's shrink wrap it and slap a license plate barcode on the outside of it. And we'll tell Sage everything that's inside of it, and we'll keep track of that license plate number or that pallet number. Then when it comes time to ship it, one trigger pull, we scan that barcode, we know everything that's there, we can ship the whole pallet with one trigger scan, okay? So it's just a way of streamlining the process, okay? So these enhancements, again, there are over 40 of them. They allow you to really customize the system. The reason we do that is we don't want you to have to pay for functionality that you're not going to use. It's a la carte. You pick the ones that make the most sense for you, and you can always add on over time. So we decide fundamental, advanced, or premium, which version makes the most sense. Are we going to do labeling? Are we doing manufacturing? Which enhancements, if any, make sense for you? And so if we've done all that work and we still don't have it quite customized to the level that we want it to be, we always have the option to do custom programming. That's not something we set out to do, but if it's something that you need, it's something we can do. For instance, if you have to deal with expiration dates in your environment, if you're using sort of a Julian date, so you have a calculator, we can build that calculator in for you programmatically and just have it automatically populate with the appropriate information. Same way with creating default lot numbers and things like that, parsing out those 2D barcodes that may have lot, serial, expiration, things like that in there. So it's just a way for us to help you become more efficient. If it makes sense to do something programmatically one time, and then it impacts something that your folks in the warehouse do all day, every day, then it's worth it. Okay. Now, in terms of usability, okay, our system, I think you will find it very, very easy to use. We design our screens to be consistent all the way through. So if I trained you how to do a receiving transaction on our handheld, chances are you could pick that handheld up and go into a sales order shipping transaction and be able to figure out how it works because the layout of the screen is the same, okay? And things like up at the top of the screen, right up here, you'll see these two icons. They're on all of our screens. We've got a clipboard and a paper airplane. As soon as I'm done with the transaction, the paper airplane is what I would click. That will actually send the information via the Wi-Fi back over to Sage and update it, whether it goes into a batch or whether we do that auto post function. That's how we sync up and get information back over there, okay? The clipboard actually shows me history, shows me everything I've done on this order. Let's say I'm processing a purchase order receipt and there's 10 line items on there. I get through the first 4 and somebody says, hey, Brian, come here and help me with this. And I go over there for 5 to 10 minutes and they say, hey, let's go to lunch. So an hour and a half later, I come back and I pick up my handheld and I say, what in the heck was I doing? I can't remember. Well, I can always hit the clipboard and it will show me the last thing I've ever done. In fact, it shows me everything that I've done on that transaction. So I know exactly where I've got to be. Okay, so our screens are very intuitive. Up at the top, you'll notice in that light gray box where it says the to location. This is a put away or a transfer. So what we're doing, we're going to move a quantity of 10, you see down below, of item number 6655 from a generic receiving staging location to its house where it's going to live for, until we need to ship it or need it for production. This is multi-bin. This is what it looks like when you identify the location that you're putting something. So at the top of the screen in that light gray box, that's where we're going to ask for the information. And on 99% of our screens, we're only going to ask your user for one piece of information, and that's it. The only time we really ask for more than that is if it's like a lot or a serial number where we need to identify how many items are in a particular lot, okay? But by far, the majority of our screens, we're just going to ask for one piece of information. We want to keep it simple. We don't want to confuse your users. We want to make it very easy for them to learn, so they want to adopt it, and make it easier for them to pick up the second, third, and fourth things when they move from receiving to shipping to physical inventory and on down the line. Okay, so our screens are designed to be not cluttered, very simple, very straightforward, very efficient. Okay, so to recap here, the real mantras that we talk about all the time: accuracy, efficiency, and timeliness. We want your inventory to be more accurate. We do so by validating all the entries along the way to nip it in the bud. We want to stop inventory problems before they can creep into Sage. Okay, and efficiency, in this day and age, we all have to learn to do more with less. You probably have staffing problems. Over 90% of the people I talk to every day have staffing problems. They tell me they've raised their hourly rate 3-4 times and they just can't get people to get off the couch and come to work. Okay, so by having some technology, by reducing number of steps and controlling those labor costs, we're going to help you do more with less and be more efficient. And timeliness, if we can take the paper out of the equation and we can stop putting things in a bin in the warehouse and then transferring it to a bin in the office, and somebody takes it out of that bin and sits down and does the administrative step of keying and regurgitating that information and shoving it back into Sage, again, with no validation, then we're really going to win. So our goals: accuracy, efficiency, and timeliness. Okay, so at this point, if you had any questions about how this might work in your environment, what we'd like you to do is reach out to your rep there at Matrix. Tell them, this is something I'd like to pursue. They will set up a one-on-one conversation with me, and I will listen to all of your wants and needs, and I will show you our system. The way that we typically go about the process is we'll have a discovery call where you tell me all of your wants and needs. What are your pain points? What are you trying to accomplish? I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about your environment so I can learn more about you and more about how you're operating and what your needs are. Then I'm going to give you a budgetary quote, and if we're good there, then we'll do a live demo and we'll show you how the system would work in your environment. That's basically how the process works. So at this point, Jerry, I think we're ready to open it up for any sort of questions that we may have.
You got it. I will unmute everybody, and we can see what questions people have.
I know it's a lot of information. Don't be shy. And again, any question that you want to ask that you may not feel is appropriate in this group format, please reach out to your Metric rep. They can set up that one-on-one conversation and we can get all of your questions answered then as well. The chances are, if you've got a question, somebody else on the call has that same question too.
This is Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes,
We can, yeah.
Yeah, I'll Jeremy, I'm interested, so I'll reach out. But real quick, so what's the hardware cost approximately, like the scanners, the handhelds?
Sure. So typically we have a myriad of scanners that we can utilize, and they range anywhere from $600 to say $3,000. Okay. Now, 90% or more of our clients use the $600 and I think $19 scanner. Okay, it's basically a cell phone without the cellular technology that does barcode scanning. Okay, it's rugged. It's got a 4-foot drop to concrete. It's got a warranty that comes with it. It's got a snap-on pistol grip that you can add to turn it into a gun type device. It does everything that you need to do. But we do have some customers that have unique environments, like in the food and beverage. If they may have cold storage, we may have to have a unit that has a built-in heater, has to have special batteries. Those are going to run you more like $3K, but that's very rare. Like I said, 90% of our users, they use the smaller. It's about the same size as an iPhone. Okay, just a little bit more rugged. Actually, a lot more rugged.
Okay, awesome. And just one quick question, and I got to refresh with my computer, with our computer guys, but we have some issues with Multibin. So my first question is, can you use ScanForce without Multibin?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Multibin is an option. Okay, so it's something that you would choose to add if you need that multiple, location per item. That's certainly not a requirement.
Okay. Great.
And
Nice
another
job.
thing, one question that always comes up, and this is, it's not in the front of your mind today, it'll pop in your head tomorrow, is about Sage licensing. Okay, our handhelds do not consume Sage licenses. The licensing is only to us here at ScanForce. We license the device itself, not the users. So let's say if you're running 3 shifts, you may have 5 handhelds, and you have 5 people on the first shift, and then 5 people on the second shift, and 5 people on the third shift. That's still only 5 licenses as far as I'm concerned, okay, on the ScanForce side. So we license the devices, not the user, but we only consume 1 Sage license, and that's on the server side that controls the communication between our application and Sage. We run on the same box as Sage, right there side by side. And the first thing you'll notice when we do a demo is we have modules called ScanForce built into Sage, okay? So that's the only Sage license that we need.
For someone that's, Brian, this is Jeremy, just I'll fill in some time. Just a couple of things. One is I can't unmute you individually. You have to unmute yourself. So if you have a question, please do that. You'll have access to your mic. Yes, question, Brian. What's the typical time frame it takes to, in elapsed time, to implement a barcoding and scanning system? And maybe that's an open-ended question based on the different elements that you want to implement, but what do you see out there in the real world as far as implementation goes?
That's a question that I have asked of our implementation team. A gentleman by the name of Gary Lamb that runs our implementation team. He has always told me that we will never be the bottleneck, that we will move as fast as our clients and partners want to move. He says, technically, we could do the whole thing in 6 to 8 weeks. Now, normally that doesn't happen because all of you that might be interested in installing a warehouse management system still have your real job to do. Okay, so there are some time delays and things that will come up in your world that will prevent you from moving the project as forward as fast as you might like. But we're ready. We're warmed up in the bullpen. And like I said, 8,000 users. You're not a guinea pig. They've got the training down to a science. They know how to do the implementation. They're going to hold your hand and walk you through the whole process. If you want to do it in a couple of months, we can do that. Probably 3 months is a little bit more normal, I would say. But if you want to go as fast as you can, we'll go that fast.
Beautiful. Is there any one thing, if someone decides that they want to try to progress on this front, is there any one thing they could do to be ready for that implementation team to take place, whether that be organization of the warehouse, getting labels on the racks? What's one of the biggest things someone could do right off the bat without you involved quite yet?
That's a great point. I'm glad you asked it. The first thing is talk to me. Okay, let's talk through your situation, and we'll be more than happy to give you advice. For instance, had a client that just signed back at the end of last year, and they said, you know, over the holidays we're going to label our warehouse, and we said, okay, how are you going to set up your warehouse location label names? And they said, we have no idea. I said, would you like some help? And they said, boy, would I. So we actually have a defined document that helps you develop a nomenclature for labeling your warehouse. So if you're at that point where you don't even have locations on the racks, talk to us first. Don't try to invent this wheel on your own. Let's use best practices. So this is something that we've done over and over, time and time again. Lean on us for advice and support. We're more than willing to help you, because the bottom line is, if you do it the right way, it makes our life a whole lot easier during the implementation too. So we have a vested interest in helping you.
Great.
That's
Thanks, guys.
That's a nice offer, yeah.
I'll be in touch.
So great, Mike. I appreciate that. I'll reach out to you after this as well. Just get at least the email conversation going. Yes, Brian, can you advance to the next slide? And we're still open for questions. So just if you come up with something, let us know. But we'll get to the next slide. One is, we want to promote these. As you all know, you're getting emails from us pretty regularly at this point of the sessions that are upcoming. So the next one is going to be around Sage alerts and workflows. The best way that I explain Sage workflows and alerts is, if you're printing reports and highlighting something on the report as an exception to give to somebody for action, this module really helps us really identify that, highlight and be proactive in the database to get an email or an alert out to somebody to take a action on that. Like someone goes into a 120-day due bucket, rather than printing off the aging report and looking for those, this is an instantaneous email or alert to help us get to that. So we're doing that the 27th, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. As you kind of get our cadence, we're going every other week. We do a new session. We record them, so all of the sessions we've done so far are up on our website underneath the About Us drop-down menu. So please feel free to go back and watch the other ones that we've done in the past. I guess, Brian, if you could advance the slide. If you have any questions about this session or other sessions, feel free to reach out to me, jeremy.russell@matrixintegrated.com, or you can reach out to me on the office line as well.